Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and today we are continuing with predicting some guilds. We just had a video come out the other day for SAG, and now we're diving into almost every other major guild. There's a lot to go over, but before that, if you're new here, consider subscribing, dropping a like, dropping a comment, helps keep you involved, as well as helps us continue to grow. And we also have a Discord down below, so if you want to get, closer, personal with us and everyone else, join it down below. But PGA time, kind of like SAG, there's a big top two. Where do you go after that? That's the real questions.
The Producers Guild Awards, this is maybe one of the biggest predictors for the Oscar for Best Picture, and it's one of the weirdest awards on the circuit because they always nominate a few things that make absolutely no sense. But first, let's just get the things out of the way that we all know are going to be nominated. For example, Oppenheimer, Barbie, they are in, no matter what, they are there. Then Killers of the Flower Moon, American Fiction, The Holdovers, Poor Things, Maestro, Past Lives. I don't see a world where any of those movies miss. So we have a pretty locked top 8. I could see if something from that locked list misses. I do think they'd lean towards cutting out Past Lives, which is the most indie film of the bunch, might not be as PGA friendly, but I think it's probably in. And, Maestro is having that divisive reaction online right now, so maybe it gets hit by that. I doubt it, though. So what happens with the final two slots? I mean, one thing worth mentioning, they do not do international films unless they are top 5. Last year, they didn't even nominate All Quiet on the Western Front. And if you go back further, the only international films that they've nominated in, the last essentially 15 years is Parasite and Roma. And Parasite didn't win here. They are all about those American titles and sometimes British. So we're going to stick with no Zone of Interest, no Anatomy of a Fall. Also worth mentioning, they don't nominate animated films here often. The last time an animated film was nominated was Toy Story 3. So that means I'm going to knock Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse out of contention as well, because if they couldn't nominate Soul, if they couldn't nominate Inside Out, they are not going to nominate Spider-Verse. So instead, I'm going to put as my 9 and 10 slot The Color Purple and Air, which both feel very PGA core. Keep in mind, last year they went for The Whale, they went for Glass Onion, and they went for Black Panther Wakanda Forever as the non-Oscar Best Picture nominated films that ended up in their list.
I do agree that it's going to be 8 out of 10 overlap, but if they do miss someone, I think it is going to be Past Lives. Past Lives is the weakest of the top 8, but that doesn't mean it's going to miss. I also have The Color Purple in here. If Color Purple misses PGA, completely dead for it. It should be a shoo-in for PGA regardless of its status in Best Picture or not. This is a movie that's made for the PGA. Then that leaves our 10th slot. I did have Spider-Man in here before, but when you bring up that stat about animated, for some reason I had in my head that Pinocchio made this last year, which obviously it did not. So I moved Spider-Man down from 10 to 12. May December, Saltburn are also in this range of maybe they could be in, but why would they be in? So I have Air at 11 and I have the Iron Claw at number 10. I think the Iron Claw, at least from its reception so far from general audiences as well as industry, it's going to be that late breaking movie that just breaks too late to be a real contender, but kind of pokes its head throughout, showing hey, if you showed faith in us before, we could have been something for real, but because we never got the real push, we're just going to come up a little bit short throughout the season. I know A24, they have Past Lives. I think in a different world, if Iron Claw was their main push over Past Lives, Iron Claw could be a 5 or 6 nomination movie, where Past Lives is probably maxing at 3, maybe 4.
It's a bit bold for you to have Iron Claw at your number 10 slot, but hey, fortune favors the brave. I would personally put Saltburn and May December over the Iron Claw. I think Saltburn has a very strong shot of being nominated. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to cut Air out of my list. I'm going to put Saltburn there instead.
Ooh,
so
yeah.
I'm going to do the exact Critics' Choice 10 and have Saltburn in.
Well, that moves us over to animated, where technically PGA, they go a little off course here. They like those movies that make that money. You look in years past, Rise of Gru checks the box. Then you go to Sing 2, checks the box. 2019 Frozen 2 checks the box. One thing that they really like, it seems like, is Illumination. And you know what movie Illumination had this year that made a lot of money? It checks this box, the Super Mario Bros. So I think your top 3 plus that has to be 4 of your 5 slots.
Yeah, so it's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Boy in the Heron, Elemental, Super Mario Bros. Movie, and then the question is, do they go TMNT, do they go Wish, or do they double up on Illumination and go for Migration? The thing with PGA Animation, you cannot count on them to do anything interesting. They will go for the critically panned movies if they see them as moneymakers, if they see them as an achievement in that way. So for that reason, I'm saying it's not going to be Wish. It could be Migration, but I think their real craving for Illumination is going to be satisfied by Mario. So instead, as my final pick, I have TMNT.
I also have TMNT at my number 5. I just think the hype around Wish is dying. Not that there's any hype to begin with, but it missing the shortlist for song kind of has me not feeling like it's going to be an Oscar contender anymore. So TMNT slides in here. And if you go throughout PGA's history, they don't really have that many like Netflix heavy hitters. Like when Netflix has like a big number 1, it gets in. But if Netflix has a year where like, oh, it's 2 movies fighting for that spot, they usually neither of them get in. Yeah. And this year's a year where it's kind of like 2 or 3 movies fighting. So yeah, Nimona, Chicken Run, Leo, even the Adam Sandler one, all would be taken out here. So I feel like that really opens the door for TMNT Wish. 50-50, take your pick.
I mean, maybe it is Nimona. I just don't see that. It just doesn't seem like a PGA Animation nomination. Let's move on to the DGA. And a fun fact about the DGA Best Director Award, in all of DGA's history, which is like, it's almost 80 years at this point, they have only not lined up with the Oscars Best Director winner 8 times total.
Big stat.
Crazy stat. Crazy stat. So the thing to look for here, they are going to line up 4 out of 5 with the Oscars 5. They are not going to get it perfect. They will miss 1, but they will be 4 out of 5. At worst, they will do 3 out of 5 with the Oscars. I'm going to go 4 out of 5, which means I will keep Christopher Nolan, Greta Gerwig, Martin Scorsese, Yorgos Lanthimos. They will all be here. I would have Jonathan Glazer in my top 5 for the Oscars, but Jonathan Glazer is not the type of nominee that would happen at the DGA. Instead, I'm going with Bradley Cooper. If it's not Bradley Cooper, I could see it be Celine Song, who would be the next in line for me.
I'm inclined to agree with your top 5. I mean, obviously, Nolan, Gerwig, Scorsese, and Lanthimos are going to be our 4 out of 5. And if they're not doing an international slot, it's probably going to be Cooper, regardless of the online perspective for that movie overall. If you're watching here, you may see I seem a little down, a little sick, or whatever. I would be even more sick if someone like Alexander Payne or Celine Song got into our top 5 of DGA. It'd be awful nominations. If you're going to go for someone else, be bold. Take someone from an international movie. Take Cord Jefferson from American Fiction. Don't go for the basic, boring choices of Song and Payne.
They could definitely do Cord Jefferson. It's a very DGA move. But that said, American Fiction is just not as strong as I had expected it to be. MGM is really not pushing it the way that they should be, which everyone else predicted except for me. Everyone else said, yeah, MGM's going to drop the ball, and then they did. But if Cord Jefferson does show up here, that really boosts my belief in that film again.
Well, speaking of Cord Jefferson, Celine Song, they are going to show up in first-time director unless the movies are really underperforming. So they're number 1. They're number 2. I think it's kind of safe to say A.V. Rockwell for 1001 is number 3. That's where the category opens up a little bit more. Who do you currently have as your last 2?
The last 2 that I have after Song, Jefferson, Rockwell is Raven Jackson, All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt, and Chloe DeMont for Fair Play. The reason I have these 2 is that oftentimes the DGA first-time director category goes much more towards those interesting picks, some of the more indie picks. Who was in last year?
It was Charlotte Wells for After Sun, Alice Diop for Saint Omer, Audrey Dewan for Happening, John Patton Ford for Emily the Criminal, and the director of Marina.
It's a pretty wild lineup. They went with Saint Omer, they went with Happening, Emily the Criminal, Marina, and to me, I don't see them going with some of the higher profile picks. I know you're going to say Michael B. Jordan and Raka Raka for Talk to Me, but that's not the type of thing that DGA does. They like to go artsy for this category, and so I'm leaning much more in the direction of those indie picks. And honestly, maybe Fair Play's not even indie enough. Why do you think they go Michael B. Jordan?
I mean, you throw away 2022, 2021, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Rebecca Hall, Lin-Manuel Miranda. 2020, Regina King. 2019, sure, there's no one really there. 2018, Bradley Cooper, Boots Riley, Bo Burnham, and you can keep going back and back. Jordan Peele, Aaron Sorkin, so many names. If there's a big name person, they are going to take them. Just last year, we didn't really have any big name, like people doing their first movies. Also, kind of funny, Cooper didn't win first time director. He lost to Bo Burnham. But here, yeah, I mean, we have a big name person, Michael B. Jordan, where when the movie came out, a lot of people were giving praise to his direction. It kind of just feels like an easy little slide in here for first time director. Maybe Talk to Me is a little bit of a stretch. I'm looking at the past. There's not really many horror movies here. So maybe I should go elsewhere, but I'm kind of doubling up. Like, I'm going to get one of these two. It's like, which one do they go for? And I'm going to assume they're going to pick one of these two, and it's just which one do they go for? I'm going to leave off the other, but I don't know.
The last time we have something comparable to Michael B. Jordan is 2016 when they nominated the director of Deadpool.
I would say almost all those names I just listed were pretty comparable of a actor turned director.
None of them were making a franchise movie. Not one of them. You had Tick, Tick, Boom from Lin-Manuel Miranda, Maggie Gyllenhaal, The Lost Daughter, Regina King, like all of those people were making indies. The last time a franchise movie got nominated in this category was Deadpool.
But then I would also say if you're going with a super blockbuster, I mean, A Star Is Born would count for that, and there's some other ones here as well.
That was still an awards player. Creed 3 is the film that features Jonathan Majors. I just think that film is going nowhere near any category just because Jonathan Majors has made the word around that film so toxic.
Michael B. Jordan's been out there campaigning as well. He was on the director's 101 sort of things. Like, he's trying for it. I just think he's there. They probably will throw him a bone for this nomination because it's for him. It's not for the rest of the stuff as well. But yeah, probably putting both Creed 3 and Talk to Me is probably not the smartest idea. But like I said, hedging the bets. I think it'll be one of them. Just, I don't really know who else to put. I would love to see Riley get in, though.
If you really, really want to go with one of those two, stick with Talk to Me. Get rid of Creed 3. Just like toss it far to the side. It is so not happening. But Talk to Me could. There is a world where they go for Raka Raka for sure. Danny and Michael Philippou could make it in, but I see no world where Michael B. Jordan makes it.
Well, speaking of throwing away and discarding, we have WGA because these don't matter this year in terms of
post-Kirsters.
Obviously, they still matter. Obviously, they still matter because, like, after the nominations happen, after the awards, like, oh yeah, of course. Instead of predicting the full nominations, we'll just predict who we think are going to win. It's that Oppenheimer-Barbie little tandem.
I actually think the WGA is going to look at whatever wins the Oscars and they're going to do something different. I think that they're going to backlash against winning films. And to me, they go with Past Lives and American Fiction.
Well, I guess we'll have to see in a few months. Do they double up, double down on the eventual winner? Or like, nah, we don't care about that. But the next body that we're going to stop at is ASC, which always loves to do something crazy, something spontaneous out there. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure out what's going to be their kooky, weird nomination of the year, which could be Barbie. But I feel like they probably have a rule where the same DP can't be nominated twice in 1 year.
No, honestly, I wouldn't suggest doing anything kooky or weird. These nominations are dead on, year in, year out. Last year, when they released their nominations, we went, oh my god, ASC has gone insane. And then what happened? 4 out of 5 of those nominations ended up happening at the Oscars. So, to me, I take these incredibly seriously. And everyone else should too. Back in 2020, they did do a weird nomination for Cherry. And Cherry didn't happen, but that's not a yearly thing. And all the other weird nominations that they did that year happened. These are always perfect or missing one. So instead of trying to figure out what they're going to miss, I'm going to just predict the Oscar 5. Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Maestro, Killers of the Flower Moon, and The Zone of Interest. They did give Lucas Sal, who is the cinematographer of The Zone of Interest, he has won multiple awards from the ASC in the past. So while I feel like Zone of Interest would be the odd one out. He won for Cold War, and he won the Spotlight Prize for Ida. So yes, I'm just going all in for Zone of Interest here. But if it's not one of those, I'd say it would probably be Saltburn or maybe Napoleon. A lot of critics groups are going for Barbie and cinematography. I think people might be tricked into thinking that's a real thing, but we're going to see when it gets to the industry awards. Barbie is not going to be here.
I guess when I said something weird, something kooky is what you just talked about, of where they kind of set the stone for what happens after it. So, like, whatever the top 5 is going to ASC is never the final top 5. So it's like, oh, maybe, like you said, maybe it's something like a Napoleon. Maybe it's something even weirder of, like, I don't know, a Holdovers or something where it's like, okay, we're saying it and now everyone's going to follow us because we know our stuff, sort of thing.
That is actually interesting because, yeah, you are right that they kind of switch things up from what you expect.
Ferrari would be the movie I think this year that they could go to. It's Eric Messerschmidt.
Oh.
Ferrari has more buzz than The Killer. It's a name that they do like. So maybe he could slide into the race, but I wouldn't predict that for the Oscars. Maybe that's like the one odd man out. But again, I don't understand any sort of buzz for Ferrari after watching it. It just feels like an unfinished movie. And I think a lot of people out there do agree with that. But I think some of the cinematography choices are very excellent in that film.
I just don't see what would miss from our top 5.
Yeah, that's the issue. I don't know. Well, whatever did miss just ends up not being that strong in the longer run, like we saw last year of like Maverick or something. And maybe that is, I hate to say it, but maybe it is Maestro, or maybe it is Killers or something like that.
Let's move on to the ACE, the American Cinema Editors. We are going to start off with the Best Drama category. And these are really good predictors. The only thing is they have 10 nominations because they have 5 in drama, 5 in comedy. So first for drama, I've got Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Past Lives, and Anatomy of a Fall. But if it's not one of those, I could see it swap out for Zone of Interest. I could see it swap out for Ferrari, Napoleon, or maybe the Iron Claw.
Just going back to last year, their nominations, actually talk about 10, are pretty in line for what the Best Picture, probably 15, has. Obviously, there's some weird movies like The Menu making it for comedy theatrical, and then like The Woman King getting in for drama. I guess
that's
for
a
drama,
Napoleon type move.
I have Oppenheimer, Killers, Maestro. I don't feel good about it, but I have Past Lives, and that just doesn't feel like an editing type nomination. But again, just talking about how I've talked about numerous times throughout this episode so far of the Iron Claws is going to be that movie that just pops its head up, be like, hey, I'm here, but I'm not for real. So I had that be my number 5 in drama.
No. Because Dylan, if the Iron Claw performs with guilds the way that you expect it to, if it shows up at PGA, SAG, if it shows up at ACE, then it's happening at the Oscars.
Maybe I'm hedging my bets here, predicting it, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I still...
Where is Iron Claw in your Best Picture list?
It's like 13, 14, right next to Air, wherever.
If you have it getting this good at Guild's Front, move it up to 11. I'm serious, because if it gets what you're expecting, my guy, Iron Claw is close to happening.
I'm a firm believer if Iron Claw was A24's main push, it is probably number 6, and it would get picture, it would get actor, it would get screenplay, and it would get a tech or 2. A24, again, doesn't really know how to prioritize movies, and obviously they're picking the People's Champion, but I just don't think the People's Champion is the smart one to really be pushing this season. You're right. Iron Claw, I'm taking it out, putting Ferrari in. Vroom Vroom movie gets in for editing.
Okay, interesting. I feel like Ferrari actually makes a lot of sense. For the comedy category, I have Barbie winning, followed by American Fiction, The Holdovers, Air, and May December. But I could totally see The Color Purple happen. I could totally see Wonka happen. And maybe my next in line, actually, over The Color Purple would be Saltburn. It was categorized as a drama with the Golden Globes, but the ACE Eddie Awards, they don't give a shit. They will put it in comedy because that's just what they do.
I have Barbie, I have American Fiction, I have Holdovers, I have May December, and I have Air. Color Purple, I think could take out May December, could take out Air, but clearly people just aren't biting on Color Purple at all so far. I also want to be shocked at Wonka, but just going into some years past, they don't really seem to bite on musicals unless the musical is like for real. So I'm not feeling great on it, and usually musicals still go over to the drama side. So Color Purple wouldn't even show up here in the comedy section.
So Color Purple's kind of just out of it. Wow.
Yeah, so that makes me feel even better about my top 5. And then I would say Wonka is probably over Saltburn. But I would probably move Color Purple to below Iron Claw to be like 7 over in drama. Because I don't buy them going international with Anatomy or Zone.
Really, they've done international films in the past that haven't been top. They were one of the only guilds last year that did All Quiet on the Western Front.
But I feel like at that point in the race, All Quiet was the man sort of thing, and I don't think Anatomy or Zone is going to be the man.
Because All Quiet missed ASC, it missed DGA, it missed so many of these other guilds that we expect to see those big players show up at, but it did make editing.
That would be a better pick than Past Lives. Do it, guys. Well, that is our giant roundup of guild predictions. Obviously, we didn't hit all of them, but who knows? Maybe we'll come back in a few weeks and hit the ones that we didn't today.
When we see the nominations for the Costume Designers Guild, Art Directors Guild, Visual Effects Society, Motion Picture Sound Editors, the Cinema Audio Society, list goes on. When we see those nominations, we can predict them. But, I mean, there's just so many categories. Are we really going to predict 3 different categories for costumes, 3 different categories for production design?
All that being said, definitely consider subscribing. We're going to have a lot of stuff coming out here soon as we are in the heat of Oscar season. New stuff is happening almost daily here on the channel. But until next time, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.